I had done a zine that I, made on the work photocopier back in the 90s, like where everybody's working at Kinko's or doing that. So it was always like the idea of that was there. And when I decided, I was like, I need to do something with this more than just posting it on Instagram. I was like, okay, I can do a zine.
Welcome to the Get the Picture podcast, a podcast for photographers who want to learn how to get the picture. Today, I'm really excited for this conversation with Adam Tanner, who is a photographer whose work I've admired online for a while, and this is the first time we're getting to talk. So without any further ado, welcome to Get the Picture, Adam.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so why don't we just start off with where in the world are you?
I'm in Boston, Mass, specifically Dorchester, one of the largest neighborhoods of Boston. It's nice. It's mostly homes and not brownstones, which most people think of Boston, but it's good. I like being here. Being here affords me the ability to travel, to go do things, and that if I was living in a more expensive part of the city, I would be like, oh, I'd love to go see this show in New York, but that I'd have to get a hotel. So I like being here. Boston's got a pretty good photography and music and every arts and cultural scene here, so it's worth being here.
Yeah, from your Instagram feed, it looks like you are able to go to a lot of shows and take photos at them. So Boston, of course, has a historic hardcore music scene going back to the 80s, but it seems like it's still quite alive right now.
Oh, definitely. And even like the other nice thing about Boston, and I think a lot of other cities have this too, is that there's a couple other metropolitan areas like Providence, Western Mass, and even Maine that aren't too far away that is under an hour. So it feels like all of these people kind of cross pollinate because it's very close. And it's also like lately there's been a ton of younger people getting back into this music, and it just feels very vibrant, where for a long time you kind of felt like, well, there's a lot of people my age here, but where are the people of the next generation? And there's a lot of that next generation now, and it's really really amazing.
That was definitely my experience in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the Twin Cities too. After not going to shows for many years, after the COVID restrictions were lifted and I started going to shows again, there's just was such a great scene of new bands and young people doing creative stuff. So it seems like it's definitely a good time to get out with a camera and document some of that that's going on.
100%.
So we've already made reference to some of the photography you do, but why don't we just talk about that more generally? What kind of photography do you do and how long have you been doing it?
At this point, I mostly do concert photography because it's what I enjoy the most, and it kind of fits into where I'm at in life. I started out doing photography like most people did in high school or college with the photography class, and we started photographing our friends. My friends were all like skateboarders, BMX people, and all those people were into punk, hardcore underground music. They eventually started their own bands. I eventually started photographing them, and it kind of snowballed. It went from, every once in a while I'd bring a camera to a show to like, this is part of how I contribute. And it also helped me 30 or 40 years later remember, like, because we all have been to 1,001 shows if you've been into it for a long time, and trying to remember, oh yeah, who else played that show? Or I mean, that helps me figure out like, oh, this photograph is from this show because on this sleeve of negatives I also have photographs of these two other bands. And the internet has been great of like, search for these three bands and this venue, when was it? For me, probably around 2005 or 6, I hit just a rut. I wasn't enjoying it. The music wasn't appealing to me. A whole assortment of things was kind of converged, and I just stopped taking pictures of concerts for a while. And I still had that love of photography. So I kind of ventured out and leaned more on like, we're going to Amsterdam or we're going here. I'm going to take a lot more pictures as opposed to just taking snapshots.
Hmm.
And that's kind of bleeded into like, okay, I'm going to do more of this. And I was already photographing other things I was into or going to that weren't music related. And that's kind of, for me, it's a lot of it's like, okay, this is all of who I am and all of my interests, and I photograph them, whether it's travel or the gay community or Burning Man or hardcore and punk shows and just music in general.
Do you now, or have you ever made a living from photography or made money from your photography?
I do not make a living doing photography right now. As most people we who do photography, we would all love to. And when I was in school, I went to school for photojournalism with a minor in graphic design. And while I was in school, I worked at the dark room there. I managed that. And then as I was getting out of school, I worked in a commercial dark room and really enjoyed that aspect of it because it was being involved without being taking the pictures. Like you could editing photos. And I got in really early on using Photoshop then because that's what the lab was starting to do, and it made me very comfortable with it, which I think a lot of photographers they feel like it's a necessary evil, and I can't wait to get into Lightroom and Photoshop and do some creative editing. I've made money on photography, but it's mostly just kind of money that feeds back into like, ooh, I have, $500 in my PayPal account from, the photographs I sold in the last year. That helps me when I want to upgrade a lens. But it's not like a sustainable living. And I almost feel like in the last 4 to maybe 5 to 10 years, it's feeling less and less like music for related concert photography specifically is like really a sustainable, like you can make a living doing this. And there's definitely people who are that maybe work for a specific in as a in-house photographer at a venue or as a tour photographer. But I think
Mhm,
it's becoming more and more rare that somebody's like, yes, I make a living doing concert photography without somebody having a studio or doing portrait work or, doing whatever other commercial work they can do. And God bless them if they can do that and they want to do that. But when I was got out of college, I was assisting wedding photographers and doing other stuff and just trying to find where I fit in photography wise. And I realized a lot of that stuff, it felt like work. And
uh,
when you're young, you're still very idealistic and go, yeah, I don't want to do work that feels like work. I want to do something I'm passionate about. And that's why I kind of like when wedding photography, I was like, yeah, that's just really not for me. Like, God bless the people who love it and are amazing at it. And there's some wonderful creative people there, but just wasn't for me. And I realized photography wise, unless I was moving to like an LA or New York, I wasn't going to be able to do the photography I really enjoyed for a living.
okay.
So I kind of leaned on the journalism and graphic design stuff I did. And in the early 2000s, I just fell into an IT job that I've been doing ever since. And IT work to me is kind of like the music photography where it never felt like work. It was something I was doing already and I was a nerd and I wanted to, keep up with this technology or that technology. And I was like, wait, I get paid to do this. This is great. And I think so many people I know like have great paying jobs, but they're miserable. I was like, yeah, I love this job. Maybe it doesn't pay as much as, being a finance person doing this, but I'm excited to go into work and I feel like every couple of years I'm like, wait, they pay me for this. Like it just like, and it almost felt like, when is the gig going to be up that they're going to realize like I'm not working as hard as I should. I'm like, well, I'm good at it, and it's kind of the way I feel with music photography. When I came back to it, I had to relearn a lot of the technology because mirrorless cameras and lenses and digital was much different than the film cameras I use and the prehistoric digital cameras I had like the sixth sense you kind of have when you're like, okay, I'm going to capture this and I know when this is going to happen and I see this and also like having gone to school for photography, you learn and I think a lot of people don't need to go to school for it anymore because you can learn it online, but learning like the framing and the rule of thirds and all of those things that like people I think a lot of younger people now see a photograph and they like it, but they don't
Uh-huh,
always understand why they like it, like the leading lines in a photograph or the rule of
right.
thirds or other composition things that you get from like art school. Like, I mean, as much as I didn't want to be a painter, learning perspective and all these other things helped me as a photographer go, want to, I want to be at this angle a little more than this angle, or, this is why I hold the camera out here instead of like shooting from this angle or whatever it was. But I think a lot of people now just learn by doing, and it helps to have the historical and art background perspective so you understand why you're doing it as opposed to
Mhm.
just doing it because it looks fun.
For sure, yeah. And going back to what you were talking about making a living for doing photography, I can't think of anyone who I know of that makes a living doing just concert photography, or at this point, almost any kind of photography, you have to hustle and have like multiple income streams. Like you can't just put up a website and sell prints and make a living off of that, no matter what, And I did try I did start doing wedding photography. I didn't think I would like it because I wanted to start making a living doing photography. And I actually liked it quite a lot. And that was a good surprise because the other option I could think of was more commercial work. And that's not really what I wanted to do, go work for the Target Corporation or whatever. And so it's been cool just discovering different types of photography that I actually really like that can be viable to make a living or at least make part of a living.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like what you were just saying, a lot of us kind of as an I don't want to sound condescending, but as an adult, you realize like, okay, I need to be able to afford to pay rent, to live where I want to live, to do the things I want to do. I need to make sacrifices to do that, but I also want to keep this passion that I love and think, and how do I keep doing that? And how to maybe at least make it sustainable so it's paying for itself? Or how do I learn? I'm 54 now and my partner's retired. And I keep thinking of like, if I left my day job right now, what would I do? And, I would be I'd be retired, but I'd want to like, would I want to run a photography gallery? Would I want to run a record store, do something that's related to this stuff that we've all been involved in for a long time that we love. And there's a reason we're still involved in it years later. How can I contribute to that? And, but also like make it a business without being like, oh my God, I have to have a business plan to do this and do that. And, maybe it's selling photographs. Maybe it's putting out books. Maybe it's helping other people put out books. Maybe it's using the years of experience that you or I or other people have doing this stuff to help younger people learn how to do it. And maybe it's helping them edit what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
or just helping them be more focused. And it doesn't necessarily have to be being a professor at a college. I mean, when I was younger, that's really what I thought I would do with photography. I was like, oh, I eventually want to teach because there were some amazing teachers that got me excited about it. And that's
Hmm.
why I went on the path I went on because I had like this one great college professor, Will Quinnell, who his passion bleeded through in everything he was doing. And even though I didn't love the photography he was doing, he was so excited about it. It got me excited about it and made me learn about like, maybe I'm never going to do that, but I learned like, oh, this is how this happened and why people shoot this and this is how you do that. And learning it all kind of bleeds over, when I was younger and just learning about photography and I started to study the history and seeing like the Ansel Adams, the Minor Whites, the Steikens, the Strands. I didn't necessarily want to always emulate that, but it definitely bleeded into like when I'm shooting a concert or doing this, I go, oh, well, this person would frame this way, or having abstract images in it like Minor White would. And it all kind of like, it all comes together at some point because you're all kind of like trying to figure out who and how you're going to shoot and how you're going to be unique and, do your own thing. And all those different influences definitely bleed through once you've kind of like learned how to do it or whatever perspective you're shooting from.
Yeah. So we will get more into your photography and settings, techniques, things like that.
Yep.
But I was most interested in having this conversation with you today because I got your photo zine end of a year 2025 that you put out and published yourself. Why don't we talk a little bit about that? Tell us what that is and why you published it.
So I got back into shooting music and concerts probably just after the pandemic. I'll go into it later with the camera and everything else. But I hit a point probably 2 years ago where I was like, I need to be doing something more with this stuff than just posting it on Instagram and maybe contributing to a record every once in a while or giving them to friends. And I put out a zine in the early 90s that was like kind of emulating all the fanzines that we all grew up loving, like No Answers and some like Triple X and other things. And yeah, I was very childish isn't the right word. It was very immature and like I was 22 at the time. But having done that made me realize like, yeah, I can do this. I mean, I've seen so many other great photographers who are peers put out photo zines or put out books. I was like, I can do this. And what I ended up doing about a year before I put out the end of the year, I've been going to Burning Man for about 10 or so years at the time. One of the things I always loved doing there is taking pictures and just taking unique pictures of like the night and the art and other aspects of that. And I put together as a trial run, I kind of knew I wanted to put out a photo book or a music zine, photo zine. And I did that burning a little zine of my Burning Man photos to give out to friends at Burning Man. And when it was kind of like a great trial run to figure out, okay, getting how many am I going to print? How am I going to lay it out? And this company, Mixum, was one of the companies I found and was recommended to me. I know a couple other people have had some issues with it, but I've had nothing but great experiences with them. It was easy to lay out. Lightroom is a great tool to help you figure out the layout and editing, obviously. Having done the old zines myself and then the Burning Man zine, when I did finally sat down to do this, I'm like, okay, how am I gonna like what is my theme gonna be? How am I gonna focus it? I can't just do like, oh, I'm gonna put all these, my favorite shots from all these different things. It'll feel disjointed. So I was like, well, why don't I do like an annual yearbook, like of my work? And when I import things into Lightroom, I go through rating, editing, and doing all that. So I was like, well, let me just look at the all my favorite photos from 2020. Like when I was laying it out, I was starting, I think, in September of 2025. I did like a little trial of like, here's all the photos from 2024. Am I going to have enough to do this? And then
Mm,
I hit like, why don't I just do 25 for 25? And then once I started laying out, I realized, oh, I need a front cover and a back cover photo also. So it's going to be 27 really, but inside it's 25. But having done the trial run with the Burning Man zine, this one felt like, okay, I just need to figure out how many I'm going to print, what I'm going to do. Am I going to sell it? Am I going to give it away? How am I going to sell it? And I did a bunch of research into figuring out like, okay, where can I sell it if I want to sell it? And what do I want to do with it? And in honesty, I really looked at it as at first I was like, well, I could sell it for this, and this is what I need to sell it for to recoup my costs. So then I
mm,
thought it's only like $300 or $400 to get it made. And honestly, I wanted it there as like how I'm going to be doing something in the future. This is yet another trial run. Like if I'm going to maybe self publish a book of my own work, this is going to be a step towards learning how to do that and going, oh, the mistake I made there will help me learn in the future. And that's kind of the way I looked at it. If it broke even, amazing. But what interested me more with it was like when I got them in my hands and I was able to give them to people who had helped me out, given me access, whose bands I had featured in it, seeing their face and going like, "Oh my god, that's so cool!" And I'm going, "Yes, this is why I'm doing this." Like
that's awesome.
it wasn't because like, oh my God, I need to make a profit and sell this and feature this artist or this artist. It was like, okay, this was all stuff that I loved. And I know I'm my own worst critic. So if I love it, I assume it's not too presumptuous to say like, okay, I know what most people like. And when I like something, hopefully they'll like it also. I mean,
Yeah.
I think as photographers, a lot of us have done work for someone and gone, okay, I've narrowed it down to like 100 images or 50 images or 20, and there's four that I like. But I know if I give them 20 or so, they're going to find ones that I didn't even look at or I discarded because they're going to go, well, I wanted to use this if it was music, a concert photo. I like the negative space on this one because I can put the title of the record over it or
Right.
whatever, which I was just looking at as like, there's too much negative space in that photo. I don't really like it.
I wanted to follow up on a couple of the things that you mentioned there. One is you talked about in Lightroom, uh, there's a tab there at the top to create a book or create a publication. Um, I guess I wanted to ask, one, is that how you did the design on your zine, or did you design it somewhere else? And two, you talked about your rating system that you use. You made reference to rating photos as you go. Would you be willing to talk a little bit more in detail about how you do that, because I know for myself, I just do 1 star. Most of the time, it's just 1 star, and those are the ones I'm gonna download and keep. And, sometimes I'll do 1 or 2 others. If I pick, like, the best ones, I'll do 2 stars or so. So I'd love to hear your system that you use for that.
Definitely. With me, I first started looking when I tried did the test run with that Burning Man zine, I looked at like what other people had used and what the best tool was. And everybody kept going back to Lightroom. It wasn't perfect, but it was the tool that you were already using that had a good book component. It wasn't like the best book component. And having done graphic design and layout in school and for professionally a little bit, I knew like, okay, I can fuss with it a little bit so I would be happy and make it a little more minimalist because, it was adding page numbers and other things that may work for certain projects, but didn't work for what I wanted to do. And so the book component of Lightroom was great. Most places that you send stuff to print at will want a PDF or something else, and you can export from Lightroom as either a PDF or individual pages. The site Mixam that I used was great because it would either import one whole PDF of the entire book or you could do individual pages. So once I imported into there and I was like, oh, I need to make an edit to something, I didn't have to re import everything. I could just import a single page PDF.
Oh, interesting.
But with Lightroom, I have a whole like system, and I know I probably stole a lot of this from somebody else. So I wish I could remember who I got it from to give them credit. But essentially, when I come home from a show, I import everything into Lightroom from the memory card and rename everything and tag everything with the location, the type of music, the band, and then leave it for like 12 or 14 hours whenever I can get back to it to actually sit down and go through. And I have a rating system of like 0 to 5. Zeros are things that are eventually going to get deleted that no AI app now or anytime in the future is ever going to be able to recover or fix whatever I screwed up in it. One, everything gets rated as a 1 when it first gets imported. Zeros are to be deleted at some point. Maybe it's too blurry or, I got a shot of somebody's feet or whatever it is that's not. And the first run through is all like rating 2s or 3s because I'm like, 2s, these are workable. Maybe they need a crop or something. 3s are like, that's a great shot that's not going to need a lot of work. And then it goes through, like, I go through another edit of like, okay, these are going to be 4s and 5s. 4s are usually for me what I want to show somebody else. 5s are ones that are my favorites. The 5s are usually what I end up posting on social media, and I'll kind of go, okay, I have 25s. I need to get it down to like 6 or 10. I don't know. I feel like on social media, a lot of people have a short attention span, but then I go, well, if they really like it, or the artist will, or whoever, or if they see themselves in the photos also, they'll go through 8 or 10 photos. And I try to think of like, okay, I wouldn't go through more than 10. So when I see people posting some carousels with 20 photos, I'm like, okay, you know your audience, but that wouldn't work for me. At least I don't think it would. But the
Uh-huh.
5 stars, the rating system I have, I feel like is very useful for me and helps me when I was trying to put this book together because essentially, the zine together, I guess, because essentially what I did is before I worked on this specifically, I went through, well, how would I do this for the previous year? So I went, you know, set up a smart collection set of like, okay, all the photos from 2024 that have 5 stars and then figured out ways to like do like the color labeling and stuff to go, okay, these are good enough for they're 5 stars that are good that are potential for this. And then I
Mhm.
started to do that towards the like December of 2025 when I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna shoot any. I have no more shows shooting it to shoot. There's nothing that's gonna get thrown into this. That's when I started it, and I pretty much chosen most of them and had like one show I shot in the beginning of December. Converge had the first time they were doing their Saddest Day Fest, and it was wonderful. I got a bunch of great shots, and there were like 2 or 3 shots from that show that I'm like, okay, these are keepers. These need to go into this. But the rating system for me is it feels tedious when I'm in the throes of it.
Yeah.
And I know it is, but it helps me afterward go into like doing something with it or finding something or, being able to do something with it. Because we all know people who are like, "Oh, I have this." They're great at what they're doing, but they're terribly unorganized. So when you're trying to help them find something, they're like, "Yeah, I know it's here and it's in this folder." And I'm one of those people where I'm too like it's my ADD going like, I need to know where it is. It has to be labeled. I need to be able to find it.
Mhm.
It kind of came off of like how I organized some of my negatives and stuff years ago, and we'll probably talk about that a bit later.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I hope people listening can learn from that. I certainly could learn from your organization system and aspire to do better because for me, when I tried to get to the part of pulling photos together for a project, a print project especially, it's so overwhelming because I have to basically start from the beginning and do all
Hmm.
that narrowing down that it sounds like you are already doing as you take the photos and edit them. So that's super helpful tip. Pin that for people who are listening.
Yeah, it also kind of bled over. It's not for me anyways, it's not just something that I do with concert photography now, and it's why when I come home from a vacation, some of my friends are like, "Oh, do you have any photos to show me yet?" I'm like, "I have a system and I have to do it this way." Like, I could send them a couple snapshots, but I'm like, "I'll have things in a week or so because I have to do go through that system I just did because I started to implement that with every other facet of photography I did."
Okay, so with your photo zine, first, for people who may not be familiar with the term zine, I think it's pretty widespread now, but not everybody knows what that is. Maybe could you say what a photo zine is or what a zine is and why you went with that format as opposed to like a larger magazine or a book? And then also just thinking through your process. So you decided on the photos in Lightroom, you used the book module in Lightroom to put it together. You got it printed. And then what happened then? The printer mailed you the copies, and then you're handling all of the distribution yourself?
Yep. So like I said before, I had done a zine that I made on the work photocopier back in the '90s. Like where everybody's working at Kinkos or doing that, and yeah, my friend Norman had professionally printed his zine too, and there was that option. So it was always like the idea of that was there. And when I decided, I was like, I need to do something with this more than just posting it on Instagram. I was like, okay, I can do a zine. I'm a pack rat when it comes to ephemera, and a lot of my photographer friends over the years have done photo zines. I'm like, this is what I wanted to do with it. I did the test run with the Burning Man zine. I knew the format, I knew the size. I kind of figured out like, okay, there's either going to be, if it's going to be horizontal or vertical, this size, I did a 7x7, this will work and be able to work for either landscape or horizontal photos. And I also looked at, okay, I know it will be much cheaper to do it black and white, but 80% of the shots I had we're all if you're shooting digital, you're shooting in color,
Yeah,
and a lot of us convert to black and white when the lighting's not great or when we know like the project it's for really needs a or wants a black and white image. But
right,
I knew I wanted to do color, and it was going to make the cost a little bit more, but it wasn't like in 2025 and 20 current time it doesn't break the bank anymore. Like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when friends were getting their fanzines professionally printed, color was okay. If I'm doing it color, I'll have to sell it for $7. If I do it black and white, I can sell it for two.
right,
Maybe not that wide of a difference, but the technology's changed, the pricing's changed. There's a million small print run companies now. I also looked at doing the zine as a wealth of photographs I shot in the '90s. I want to do something with that. I have a book in project in mind. This is kind of like baby steps towards that. And honestly, I almost looked at it as okay, if I break even, it'll be amazing. But I know a lot of professional photographers do promo pieces they send out to prospective clients or to studios they work with. And I kind of looked at it as like a hybrid of like, yeah, I'll sell some of it. It'll be a promo piece that I can kind of give out to friends that have helped me. Because when I came back to shooting bands, I wanted it to only be stuff that I loved. I wanted to be like, I'm going to shoot this concert because I like this band or I like the label that my friend does or the venue or whatever I wanted. And I looked at it as like, I want to contribute to something. And so selling some, giving some away, there was definitely a mix of it. And I researched the pricing. Mixum was very affordable. I know there's some cheaper places, and I know there's like zine printing places that will print it almost like on photocopying paper. And I just knew I wanted something better. Like, and I'm not slighting anybody else who's doing the other stuff because an acquaintance, Mark, is doing a great photo zine that's like black and white, and it's very like looks like zines we used to do when we were younger.
Mhm.
That's still amazing, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for this.
When I did want to know, like, for people who may not be familiar with what a zine is, kind of explaining that a little bit, but also, did you look at, speaking in terms of technologies changing, something that exists now that didn't exist back then is print on demand, like websites like Lulu, which I used to do a photo zine this past year, where you don't have to put any money up front. You just send them a PDF and people can go to the link and order it. And that way, if only 5 people want it, you haven't lost any money. And if 1,000 people want it, you can do 1,000 of them. So I was curious if you looked into that as an option or not.
Yeah. Zines, I mean, from the community we're in, we kind of have like a, you know what it is, but it's essentially like a self-published magazine. It could be, a photo magazine, a photo zine, or it could be, somebody's poetry or whatever. But it was more of like, we come from this punk and punk adjacent community. It was like people doing things from the DIY component. Like we're doing it ourselves. In the 80s and 90s, it was like doing it on photocopiers because we had access to a work photocopier or a friend worked at Kinko's. Now it's different. Like, Kinko's, I think still exists, but it's just a different animal. And I looked at Lulu and a bunch of other companies that do the print on demand. If I was doing something more like a book, I'd probably steer towards that a little more. But as a zine, I wanted it to be something that was just like, okay, I kind of looked at like how I would distribute it, who I wanted to get like promo copies of it, I guess, like people that helped me and there, or bands who were photographed in it. I wanted to be able to kind of know like who got them and how they got them. Where the print on demand is like, okay, it's a book and I just want it sold. I didn't want to really know like how people got it, or it's a learning process for me. And I wanted to kind
Yeah.
of be hands-on with it. Where the Lulu and some of the other distribution means were less of like, okay, I need to learn like, oh, this didn't sell, or this it cost me this to have them sent out from Lulu to the 20 people I wanted them, free copies sent to. But it's not
Hmm.
that it's better or worse. It was just, it's what worked for me.
Hmm.
And Mixum, I have nothing but great things to say about it. It's just the affordability, you could get, 20, 50, 100. And I decided on 100 because the Burning Man photozine project I had done, I did 50 because I was like, okay, I can easily give 50 of these away. With this, I was like, 100 is a safe number. Like, maybe it's a collector's item. Who knows? But I wasn't thinking that way. I was like, okay, I know I could get rid of 100 I'm going to be giving a third of them away to people, friends, people who have helped me, selling another, amount of them, and then the rest of them are like, I'm going to be shooting at some hardcore festivals this summer. I can either sell them there or give them away or whatever. I'm fortunate. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I can afford to just go, okay, I can afford to spend $400 on doing this. And if I make money back, awesome. If I break even, fantastic. But I'm doing it for the experience and kind of helping me to learn what I'm going to do next with other photo projects.
And I think this is a really good example of for people who are doing photography, you've been doing it enough to have a collection of photos that you think could work as a print product, whether it's a zine or a book or a magazine. And it can be very intimidating to try to think about finding a publisher or doing it yourself and
Uh,
putting up a ton of money. I think your zine is a great inspiration for something that people can look at as you can learn as you go, like you said, and try different things. And you can put down a not insane amount of money and come out with a beautiful product and sorry to call it a product, but
yeah.
a beautiful zine, a beautiful piece of work. And then you can figure out if you can sell them. You can, really just get it out there. And yeah, so I think it's a great way to do it. Is to do something that way. It's something you don't have to wait for a publisher to take interest in your work or pound the pavement to talk to 20 different publishers. You can just do it. And one question I had, when you're publishing a zine or a book of photos with bands or people in them, did you ask permission from the bands before publishing those images? Or generally, the way copyright works, as I understand it, at least in the US, is if you take the photo of a band, for example, you have the copyright to that photo. But how did you handle that?
As I kind of said, I'm the Burning Man and this zine were kind of like baby steps towards getting a book published, whether I self-publish it or I find, a small publishing company to do it. So I really read about like, the what copyright is and I mean copyright law is and that if I took the photo, especially of a concert, I own the copyright. And especially with what we're shooting, where I'm not going into like Live Nation venues where you sign half your rights away. I'm shooting bands that are friends of friends or independent, and I'm helping them as much as just I love I'm helping them promote their band and the club or the concert that they're putting on, and it's editorial use. And editorial use has a completely different component to it than commercial use. If, like if I was putting it on a t-shirt and selling a t-shirt with that image or a cup, that I feel like, okay, I would
Mhm.
need to contact the band or the venue or whatever is on there. And yes, I'm selling the zine, but it's less of a like, I'm making $1 million off of this and I used your
Right.
image. No, it's like coming from the community we come from, we're all trying to help each other out. None of us are making $1 million off of doing this. I mean, maybe some eventually will, like Green Day or something, but I'm doing this because I like these people are my friends, and these people are people, or they're just musicians I want to support, and this is how I can support them.
Mhm.
And realistically, I don't think anybody that is being featured in something like this is going to go, am I going to get paid for showing up in your zine? I'm like, well, I made $1 off of this. Do you want? It's more
You
of
want your
like,
cut
yeah.
of a
I
dollar,
mean,
right?
the people that I've given it to that were in it were like this is awesome. This is great. I love seeing this and doing something like this. I mean, the other aspect of it is like getting something in people's hands. I know so many younger people grew up on like social media and Instagram and seeing photos there. And I think a lot of people shoot specifically for that almost sometimes. But for me, I was like, I need to have something tactile in my hands that I can open and show my friends or show people that have no idea what hardcore punk even is, that can go, oh, this is what you do. And this is because they're not necessarily going to scroll my Instagram profile and see the concert
Mhm.
photography I've done, but they'll see a book on my coffee table and go, oh, this is what you do and this is how you're doing it. And but I think with the copyright stuff, like from where we're coming from, I don't think that's going to really come into play.
Right.
When I eventually get around to putting out a book, I'm very conscious of like, okay, how I'm going to do the book, how I want to lay it out, and what I want to include in it. I want to try to include some flyers of the shows that the photographer of. And I'm thinking to myself, do I make an effort to contact the person that did that flyer? I mean, if it was somebody who's a commercial artist, I probably would. But if it's
Mhm.
just a friend who was doing like putting on shows at a college and they, did this layout in their art class, I think they'll be more happy to see it in there than
Yeah.
they'll be like, well, how are you going to compensate me for? I mean, I've also seen with how cheap it is to get things printed these days, people just doing short print runs of books of flyers. And that to
Mhm.
me is kind of cringy because I'm like, you're taking somebody else's work and it's solely somebody else's work and you're selling it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it feels like you're bootlegging a record or a shirt. You're like you're making a profit off of somebody else's work and you're not giving them anything for it. This,
Right.
I feel like, is like I'm trying to support a community and also do something with my art. And if the book I end up doing gets published by a major publisher, sure, they're going to have much crazier, like, you need to contact every one of these artists. But if I'm doing it myself or a small publishing company is going to do it, they understand this community and they know, like, yeah, the person who made this flyer in 1992 is going to be happy that it's there and not like sue for copyright infringement or something.
Yeah, totally. Like, there's a book of zines, basically. Can't remember the title offhand, but I was flipping through it in a record store, wondering if my zine was in there, and there was an image of the cover of the first issue of my zine in there from the '80s, and I was just so excited that I bought it, because I didn't
Yeah.
even know who published it or that this person would have had my zine. So yeah, I agree. Having uh, been in that situation, I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's move into your photography itself. So when you shoot concert photography, what are you trying to capture and what story are you trying to tell? And how would you describe your photographic style?
I really feel like and I said this a little bit, when I first started taking pictures of concerts, it was mainly just to document what my friends and I were doing.
Hmm.
And because that's how I could contribute. Like I wasn't a musician, I wasn't putting on the shows, I wasn't making the flyers. This was my contribution. And I really just wanted to it's hard to explain to somebody you would understand, but to somebody who's not involved in underground and punk hardcore music, I mean, I guess it's a little bit different now that like the Green Days and the Offsprings and all those bands broke, and all of that stuff was on MTV for ages. But capturing the chaos, the energy, the sometimes danger of being at shows, I really just wanted to capture what I was experiencing.
Uh-huh.
And also, like, having studied photography, I went in from like, okay, the rule of thirds and framing and all of that stuff. I was trying to combine all of it and go like, I wanted to capture this great image of like people pointing, finger pointing and singing along, but also make it an image I was happy about because, like, look, it's the rule of thirds. This is here, or there's a leading line of the crowd leading right to the singer. And yes, not people might instinctively see that in an image, but I was trying to take the like art history part of me and put it into like I'm documenting this thing that I'm a part of and my friends are doing. And yeah, early on, like I was saying, we all stole from Charles Peterson. Like especially with the shutter drag stuff. We as an art student, I kind of studied like some other photographers I enjoyed, but Charles Peterson was one of the first people that I was like, my friends and I are doing that. What's the history behind it? How does he do it? Why does he do it? And it became what it was because it fit the energy of what was going on there. Like when you're in a mosh pit or stage diving or in the middle of it or you're trying to, as a photographer, dodge a lot of it, you want to like that shutter drag catches that. It has that frenetic energy. Yeah, when we were all doing it, I mean, I think almost everybody I knew back in the 90 to 94 or 5 era was like experimented with it and did a lot of it. And we kind of got bored of it a little bit and then tried to go into other aspects of it. And what helped me is having the art background to go like, oh, if I'm not going to do shutter drag to show the excitement of it, how else can I do that? And can I do it by showing like a big crowd shot and doing the leading lines in a crowd shot but I mean, I was also very fortunate that when I was shooting, there were a lot of other people that were contemporaries of mine that I thought were much better at what they were doing than I was. And maybe they weren't, but I was looking at it as going like, yeah, Chris Tolliver or Mark Beamer or all these other people or BJ Pappas or other people. They were all people I looked up to, but they were contemporaries and they were people that I could go talk to after a show
Uh,
and ask like, yeah, I saw this really great photo you did. How did you do that? And Charles Peterson was a little bit removed from that for us, but we at least like we were all trying to steal from this person, or maybe not the best. Like we were all influenced by this person, and we were all like going, "Yeah, how are you doing that? Like, are you doing it with and we all had kind of a similar setup. We all had like 24, 28 millimeter lenses open wide and, learned what shutter speed to use, it worked best with a flash. You could probably do it without a flash, but using a flash with it was what made it like work.
yeah.
Um, but I think a lot of us got, not that you don't want to just get pegged as only doing one thing, but you want to go like, okay, I'm not just that.
Right.
And I see a number of younger photographers now that like discovered the shutter drag thing, and it's what they do. And it looks great for what they're doing. But I know from my own experience, like, okay, I got bored with it. Like I learned how to do it. I know how to do it. And I had to relearn how to do it when I shot digital because it was just a little bit different. But
Yeah.
you also digital made it so that you could easily go like, I'm going to play and I can, take 10 shots of this and learn it and not go, oh, I only have 4 more shots on this roll of film and I only have 1 roll of film with me.
Yeah. So what equipment do you use when you're doing concert photography at shows? What's your starting point for settings? That's one question. And I guess the other thing is with, like you said, some of your images use shutter drag, some don't. I don't know, when I'm thinking about just looking at your images in your Zine or on Instagram, like it does seem like a common thread is capturing that energy, that excitement, that unpredictability, maybe at these concerts, and maybe a sort of brightness too that comes through them.
Let me get into the equipment a little bit. About 4 years ago now, my partner and I had planned a bucket list trip to go to the Galapagos Islands. And I knew that the old Nikon D70 digital body I had from 20 years ago wasn't going to cut it. And I was like, okay, mirrorless is probably the way to go. And I had all Nikon lenses and Nikon bodies. So I knew I'm probably going to stay with Nikon. And I researched, okay, the Z6 II at the time was like that prosumer body that was good in low light. Yes, there was, I think those Z8 and the Z9 were out, or maybe the Z7 and Z8 were out. And I was like, yeah, but just getting back into it, I don't want to spend $5,000 on a body. I can rationalize spending $2,000 on a body. And for me, I also, using it on that trip, I also told myself, if I'm getting this, I want to be able to use it to start shooting concerts again
Hmm.
because I was going to a lot of concerts again. I was like, okay, I felt that like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm so used to like my concert experience is photographing it, and that's how I remember it, and that's how I contribute. So I ended up getting a Nikon Z6 II. I researched the heck out of like what works best in low light and, learned about the trinity of the 2.8 lenses, the, 14 to 24, the 24 to 70, the 70 to 200. And, the 24 to 70 is really what I use a lot. And most people I find using just because it's the best, like middle of the road. But you also know, like when you're in a certain spot, when I first got some of the lenses, I bought them used on either KEH or MPB, and those are great sources. Like especially when you're
Yep.
trying to save money and you're not like sure about. I don't want to spend $3,000 on this lens, but if I can get a used older one for 800, I mean, with Nikon they have adapters for some of the non-mirrorless lenses, and I already had some of
Yeah.
the non-mirrorless lenses, so I started with that and then slowly upgraded each of those lenses. And the 2.8 Trinity was great. I ended up using the 12 to 24 a lot when I'm like right at like, in a spot where I can't back up enough to try and get
Yeah.
something. Yeah, there's distortion to it. And you quickly learn how to fix some of that distortion in Lightroom or Photoshop. But those 3 lenses, the 70 to 200 I use when like, okay, I want to get good drummer shots and I can't get stage access, or it's too crazy of a crowd and there's no photo pit and I can't get stage access or get in a spot where I can take pictures without, having to constantly look around and dodge. The 7200 works. The one thing I started to run into when I started to get back into it was I was starting to shoot in venues that I couldn't use a flash. And historically, I'd always used a flash. So that was
Right.
something that, okay, let's start finding these online resources for concert photography. And honestly, most of them were geared towards people shooting without a flash. They're giving you settings and how to shoot for like stadiums and big venues, which wasn't really what I was doing or what I wanted to do. So I kind of had to take like pieces of it and go, this is what I'll use. Like, yeah, I need a good 1.8 prime 24 lens for because I'm going to be right at the stage without a flash. And there's a number of venues in Boston that I shoot at, like the Sinclair and some others that you can't use a flash unless you're the tour photographer or something. And it took me a lot to learn how to shoot in those
Mm,
flashless locations. And I definitely learned that like that's not where I flourish. Like that's I can do it, but and I had this conversation with another photographer friend about like I forget what band it was. They had photographed a band at a that's a hardcore band at a venue that they couldn't use a flash. And I said to them, when I can use a flash, I can usually turn around photos in like a day or so. Without a flash, I need to set up Lightroom presets for like the lighting for that specific venue or even that specific set because, the opener is going to have different lighting than the headliner. And then have to go like, oh, the flashless shots I shoot tend to go more black and white because you don't have as much control over the light as you do with a flash. Like with a flash, I can go, oh, I want to get these three people exposed or I want the whole scene exposed. Without a flash, you're going, and it also depends on like the setting. Like if you're like the Sinclair that I shoot at, I could shoot for the whole set. A lot of the other
okay.
venues that you need a photo pass at, you're going, I have three songs. I don't have any
Yeah.
control over the lighting. So how can I best minimize all the problems I may run into? And
Mhm.
you definitely learn from trial and error. Like the first couple shows I shot without a flash, I did so much work in Lightroom and Photoshop, it was painful. But being able to like have that background using those programs a lot, it didn't feel painful to me, but I was like, I know I'm spending way too much time doing this when I should be able to just do this. So like, how can I help adjust it beforehand or fix the issues beforehand or adjust what I'm shooting or maybe get a different lenses or and there's some great photographers in Boston that are I see all the time now and have become acquaintances and friends that help me go like, oh yeah, this is what I shoot at when I'm shooting at that venue.
Mm.
And this lens is perfect. Like an 85 1.8 is perfect for there because you're just far enough away, and that's what being a part of a community is great for. It's like having those resources and having people to lean on. And yeah, the internet and discords for music photography are great, but they're not necessarily shooting where I'm shooting or shooting what I'm shooting or the venues and dealing with some of the issues we're seeing.
Yeah. As you were talking, I thought about, well, your zine does have photos of Touche Amore in there, which is my absolute favorite band these days. The last time I saw them, I couldn't bring like they played a venue where I couldn't shoot with flash, and so they played and Soul Glow played. They were incredible too. And this
Yep.
was now 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm still sitting on those files. I haven't finished editing them because I'm just like, I wish I could have used Flash, and it takes more work to edit them. Now I guess with the denoise in Lightroom being improved, maybe I should take another crack at them. But
The tools have like having worked in a commercial black and white darkroom when I was in college and afterward taught me about like, the dodging, the burning. And now with Lightroom and Photoshop, those things are all done with masks and knowing that and kind of going like, yes, like I mean, for me, I still go like I want like white whites, black blacks. I want tones. I want like, and then like masks are fucking amazing in Lightroom and Photoshop. Just being able to go, I want to, I didn't use as low of an f-stop as I would like to, or for that photo. So Lightroom has a tool to blur the background without having to use masks. And yes, I ended up using masks more than using the background blur tool just because sometimes I just want to go, okay, I want to like blur it just a little bit so that you're focusing more on the person than the bass player behind them or the drummer. But yeah, like shooting without a flash is a whole other animal, and there's people who excel at that and that's their passion and they love shooting these big venues, and the lighting there is definitely much different than like shooting a dimly lit
yeah,
smaller 200 cap room or 400 cap room or a punk club or a VFW hall, and they're all different animals that you need to figure out how to make the best of.
Yeah. So you talked about at most of the shows you shoot, you're pretty close up to the stage when you're shooting. Curious to hear any stories you have of either your equipment or yourself getting harmed in the process of doing the photos you do.
I feel like I'm very fortunate. Every other photographer I know has a broken flash story or the camera getting knocked out of their hand. I mean, it comes from experience, but I feel like I have developed like a sixth sense of like having eyes on the side and back of my head of like, depending on where I'm standing, I know like, okay, stage divers can only come from this direction and people dancing behind me will knock into me, but they'll just push me towards the stage. I mean, yes, it's great to be able to it's easier to be able to shoot with a barrier at a show, but it's a completely different type of show. And the energy is different. And I know musicians who feel that same like, yeah, I play shows with the barrier, but I really love when there isn't one. But I've definitely been very lucky that I haven't broken any equipment, haven't really gotten hurt. The injuries I've had were from when I was dancing and diving and a dumb kid, less so than shooting pictures. Because I think for the most part, people at a show really respect, especially punk and hardcore shows, respect that this person's there documenting this thing.
Yeah.
And if you're there enough, you're part of the community, people know who you are, and they go like, the new person that's coming there that's trying to dance hard, people will go like, don't knock into that guy again.
Right.
He's our photographer. He does this. And I feel like at most scenes, there's a lot of that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if you had seen and I don't want to give this band any more publicity than they had gotten, but like there was a band last year that like singled out a photographer and like tried to knock the camera out of their hand. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're a band, you're an artist. You would really hate if I went up there and tried to knock your guitar out of your hand. I'm creating like, and especially because these people, I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm doing this because I love it and I want to support this community. Being a dick to me about it doesn't help your, unless you're just looking for publicity and like trying to go viral or something. We all need to support each other. None of us are making $1 million off of this, and maybe some people are, but most of us aren't. But with trying to keep my camera equipment safe, I've always used a camera strap. And I know some people don't, and they do the reach out and when I was younger, I always had the strap wrapped around my wrist. Now, as I'm 54 and I'm trying to do some of the things I used to do when I was younger, I go, okay, I have a crossbody strap that I have the camera on and I can go up and down on it. So at least 3 or 4 times since I started shooting again, when I've gotten jostled around, having that camera strap, it just means the camera falls out of my hand and I can kind of cover for it.
Mm.
And I think we've all like learned that stop, drop, and roll kind of like, okay, I got to protect my camera. I can get bruised, but the camera can't get broken. But the
Yeah.
camera straps for me have always been like, I know some people don't use them, but for me, it's a lifesaver.
Yeah, I use a camera strap too, and it definitely helps in situations where you might get jostled. I don't know if you have listened yet to my most recent episode with Rob Coons, where he talks about
Yep.
having like 4 flashes ripped off the cameras and getting lenses cracked and all that. I don't know if maybe the scene in the Bay Area is just a little more rough, but these days, but in the Twin Cities, I haven't either had that kind of problem. So and I agree with you. You just sort of develop a sixth sense. You can just see like if somebody is a little more out of control or less discerning about where they're dancing or who they're running into. You just kind of move the camera out of the way when they're coming towards you.
Yeah, and I've been very lucky. Like a lot of the non-photo pit shows that go to, that I have to be in the crowd because I can't get on stage. I can't get stage access, or there's no photo pit. I have 2 or 3 friends who I've made since getting back into shooting that are like, they get to the shows right before doors open. They want to be right up front. My
Yeah.
friend Barry, he's like 6'2", 6'4", big guy, my age, a little bit older, collects set lists. He's always right up in front. He's the perfect person to stand next to because if somebody's stage diving, they have to go over him. If somebody's knocking into him, he's an amazing shield for me. uh,
I love that.
he knows it too. But there's like you learn those kind of like, and I watched the episode you did with Rob Coons, and I was like, okay, for me, I would have been like, that's a lesson. Like, okay, if I broke two lenses and flashes, I need to figure out how to position myself so I don't. But that's just how I would do it. I would be like, okay, I got hurt. I need to do this without getting hurt. But it's, what works for him might not work for me.
Yeah. So you recently posted some photos of a band called Breakdown, and wrote along with that post a sort of what seemed to me a heartfelt caption on it that as a queer kid growing up in the hardcore music scene in the 80s and 90s, that some of that band's homophobic lyrics made you really question if you had a place in the scene, and that all these years later, seeing a room full of people singing or screaming along with those lyrics was disheartening. Love to hear more about that, like about your experience being a queer kid in the music scene back when homophobic lyrics and stuff were more of a accepted part of the mix than it seems like they are today, at least in most parts of the scene. And where do you see things today in terms of the scene and in society in general?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at when I was posting those photos, I agonized over if I was going to say something or not. And I really ended up looking at it. I talked to a couple other friends who are gay or trans or in our community and said like, this is what I'm thinking of saying. And I want it to be like, I don't want to be shaming someone but I want to be like kind of just going, this is 2026. And things that were accepted back in 1987, like we're in a different place than we were then. And I looked at it as like when I agonized over whether to say anything or not, I thought to myself, okay, when I came out in my zine in 1993, I looked at it as I wanted to be the role model for other people that I didn't have. And I kind of wanted to look when I agonized over this and saying something there, I was like, I want that like 17-year-old kid who's trans or questioning or whatever, wherever they are on the spectrum, to go like, oh, there is a place for me here, and that people aren't okay with this. Because I grew up in a scene where the Bad Brains had a song called Blow No Bubbles. And at first no one said anything about it. And I'm like, but then there were definitely people who were out like Mike Bullshit and a couple other people in the scene peripheral to the scenes I was involved with that were out and gay and trans and whatever. And people started to bring up things. And I looked at it as like, if I'm saying something here, I need to keep like a conversation going about it. Like hearing those like the Bad Brains or this breakdown lyric when I was younger definitely stifled me. It made me go,
Mhm.
if people are into this and they're excited about this, do I really fit in here or is this okay? And it also like, it's like hearing people use the word fag when you were younger and it makes you go, there's something wrong with me. There's like, they're using it as a put down. And in that specific lyric, that's what it was. And you go like, what's wrong with me? Why am I like, and you
Mhm.
when you start to meet other people I mean, that's one of the things the internet has been great for, to help people find community and realize that, yes, you're a unique person, but you're not alone. You're not the only person that's dealt with that or experienced that. And honestly, after I saw that concert, well, let's step back a little. I knew going into that concert that this band Breakdown was going to be playing. They were a game changer when that band came out. Like for that type of like beat down, whatever you want to call it, more street version of hardcore, that was a game changer. And I hadn't listened to that record in probably 25 or 30 years, that demo, the Breakdown demo. And I went back and listened to it just to kind of go, okay, I'm going to be shooting this band. I want to know like when remind myself of when the good parts are and when there's a breakdown and this would be a good spot to get a crowd shot or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that cringy lyric. And I was like, yeah, this came out in 1987. It's a different time now. And so I went through looking at some videos of that band playing in the last 10 to 15 years. And it seemed like the singer Jeff was always handing the mic off to the crowd when that part of the lyric came out.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, maybe he's not totally, ecstatic about those lyrics anymore, but people are going to sing it. And so when I saw them perform it live and people were still singing that, faggot part, I'm like going, really? Aren't we better than this now? And the way I kind of looked at it is when I wanted to write something up to go with it, thought to myself, do I think that Jeff, the singer from Breakdown, is a bigot in 2026 for lyrics that he wrote when he was probably 18 in 1987? Of course not. but the music scene now isn't what it was then. And not that everybody has to be accepted everywhere for everything, but like we've grown as a community and we've grown in a thousand other ways so that like, why not this? And not that I expect this band to change or to for them not to sing this lyric, but like I wanted somebody else to hear that, like, yeah, I hear this and it's not okay for me either. And honestly, the only way a lot of things change is if we talk about them. And people will hear you a little bit more when you're not going like, you're a bigot, you're an asshole. And more of like, this is how it made me feel, and this is how it affected me, and how it still affects me. And that's the perspective I looked at from it. I wanted to be there for people like the ways I wish that I had people to look up to, or that I had very few role models, I guess the best word for it. Like I didn't have people to look up to to go like, yeah, I'm not alone. That isn't the only thing, or that isn't the only way things can be done or said. And
Mhm.
I was very fortunate when I came out in the hardcore scene. 99% of all my friends were supportive, bands were supportive, and I know I was very lucky because I know people who had terrible experiences and got kicked out of their houses and lost friends or whatever. But I was very fortunate, and I see that the music scene, punk, hardcore, indie, whatever, is 150% more accepting. And if somebody's saying something or doing something that is targeting a community, they're really like, no, that's not who we are. That's not. And I just kind of wanted to lead by example, I guess, is the best way to put it. I mean, it just made me sad. Like that this was still happening, that this is still occurring. And I'm going, yeah, I know it's that band and that style, but and I mean, even the Bad Brains changed, like, Blown Up Bubbles is an instrumental now. And a lot of other people who, like, I remember in the 90s or even the late 80s, like, without thinking, just said, "Oh, don't be a fag." Years later, that these people are still my friends are like, yeah, I was a kid. I shouldn't have said something like that. And that's kind of what I hope people like, I don't know Jeff from Breakdown, and I don't know if he'd even hear this, but like, I want people to go like, yeah, I was a dumb kid when I wrote that. And I'm 57 now. Like, I don't feel that way anymore, or I don't think that way anymore, just so people like me and younger people like that are just figuring out who they are don't go, oh, I don't have a place here because that band's popular and they hate people like me. And it's not really the case, because 99% of the other bands are all like super supportive and have gay or trans or anything across the spectrum band members. I mean,
Mhm.
and I think that's amazing these days. Not even just that there's more bands that have women in them, that have trans people and have gay, that have out gay people in the band. And it's just, I couldn't have imagined this when I was coming out my zine in 1993, that 2024, 5 and 6 there would be, there's at least 5 bands I know of that have trans singers. I can't even keep track of how many bands have gay and lesbian members, like,
Mm.
or bands that have female fronted or female members. Like, not that like we have to like go, oh, we have to have this many minorities or this, but it's just like that everybody's taking part and everybody feels welcomed. And that's kind of what I wanted to get across saying that. And trust me, I agonized over like, do I even say anything, or do I just post the pictures? And I'm like, I need to say something, because this is like, they're still singing this lyric 30 or 35 years later. Like, it's not okay anymore. The one thing I did do is turn off comments on that post, just because that was what I feared, was like anonymous people coming in to just chime in and say something stupid. And I just didn't want to have to micromanage it. I wanted to be like, if somebody cares enough to DM me, yeah, great, we'll have a conversation. But
Mhm.
like somebody that can anonymously make a comment on something, I was like, no, I don't need that. It's not why I'm doing it. I want to, just make a little bit of a statement. I'm not like somebody with a million followers that just the community that I'm involved in will see it and hear it.
I appreciate you sharing all of that. Yeah, I think seeing now in my experience in the Twin Cities currently, like you said, there's really like a whole scene of bands with trans folks in them and queer folks in them, and it's not like it felt when Riot Girl started and Bikini
Hmm.
Kill and all of those bands where they had to like fight for space for there to even be like a woman in in a band or a band of all women, and there was still a lot of homophobia in the scene, and not to mention transphobia. Yeah, it definitely seems like things are in a much better place, even though those there are still active struggles. Like people still do and say stupid shit. But the good thing is now it does seem like you did, and like you were talking about, there are more people who will call it out and say something, and hopefully help make that space more open and accepting.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest part about it is like years ago, we would be like finger pointing and angry, and like people don't hear you when you're. And yes, like if somebody's being singled out as being gay or being targeted, you have a right to be angry. But the people that you're trying to reach aren't necessarily going to hear you if you're like, "You're a fucking bigot. Why did you?" But when you say like, "Well, this is," when you personalize it, it helps to like people hear you and go like, "Oh yeah, I'm not gay or trans or," but I grew up Irish in an Italian neighborhood, so I can understand the otherness feeling, and
Mm.
I can relate to how I would have felt if somebody singled me out and did single me out, and I don't want to do that to somebody else.
Sure, for sure. So, what are some of the favorite bands, if you had to pick the favorite bands that you photographed over the years, like back in the day and now? And then why don't we just end it up with where people can find your work and order your photos, if there are any
Sure.
left?
I mean, what I kind of find is for me, my favorite photos a- and bands were it's a mix of like how much I love that band and when I shot them and how the photos turned out. For me, I could think of a couple specific shots that were from like the 92 to 94 or 5 era that were just like I happened to catch like a band like Sunny Day Real Estate before they blew up.
Mm.
Friends of mine worked in the music industry or somehow had gotten Sub Pop promos, and we were all listening to this and we're like, "Oh my god, this is like Revolution Summer, but different." And it was like, we all loved Embrace and Rites of Spring and all of like the Discord standards. And Sunday Day Real Estate was doing something that was kind of like in that pocket, but all its own. Like they took those influences and made something unique. I just was very lucky that I forget which friend it was, but I know who I was there with. Seeing Sunny Day Real Estate at CBGB's, I was right up front. I got some of my still to this day some of my favorite photos of them then. Just a year later, I wouldn't have been able to get those because they weren't playing a CBGB's. They were playing the Academy or some other bigger space where I wouldn't have been right up front. But I
Mhm.
think also like some other shots I had from that era, like of Drive Like Jehu or Jawbox, in venues like CBGB's that just these grimy, they kind of like just have that perfect feel of like you're at a punk show and this is how it feels like. I've never been to Gilman Street in the Bay Area, but I imagine that's kind of that same, it's
Yeah.
always had that same feel. And I remember the Anthrax feeling like that. And, you know, VFW halls and some of the current clubs might not have it, but it definitely it was a time and a place of, like, shooting that band before they were big or in that space, and for me, it also came down to, like, how good the shots came out, and by that time, I kinda figured out how to do what I was how I was shooting well, so, like, I really liked the photos, the light was good, I was in the right spot, all the stars aligned.
Mhm.
But in current bands, there's bands like Strife and Bane who are, very hardcore and not necessarily going to appeal to like the people who love Discord or the people who like Radiohead. But those bands like those, and there's 100 other bands in that pocket that have
Mhm.
so much energy live and they're so frenetic that it feels like a cheat code when you're photographing them. Like it feels
You can't take a
like
bad picture. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's like this person jumps around so much or the singer is so emotive. Like, I feel like when people were photographing I don't feel like I've ever seen a bad photograph of Fugazi because everybody in the band was so into it and lost in the music that it's so easy to get a good photo of them. And a lot of these high energy hardcore bands like jump around, spin around, do whatever it is, their energy, like it feels like it's a and honestly, the cheat code is the best word I can come up with it for because it's like this band Strife in particular, they're old friends of mine I've known for like 30 plus years. Every time I photograph them, I'm like, why is it so easy to get good photographs of you guys? I mean, and I was talking to somebody else afterward. I was like, it's probably a combination of I know them, I know their songs, I know how they perform, and just being able to get like, okay, this is the part where so and so is gonna really stretch out, or the drummer's gonna do or a fill, or the singer's gonna jump into the crowd. Like
Yeah.
that ends up being half the battle of like shooting a band. And some people who shoot their friends' bands only, they get very good at it because like this is that part in the song, or this is, they're at this venue and people are going to stage dive during this part, and you learn that.
You get that split second head start anticipating what's about to happen.
Yeah, and that's something you can't teach. You have to learn it. You have to go like, "Shoot, I missed that. Shoot, I missed that." And then you go, "Okay, well, and burst mode on the digital cameras is almost feels like cheating sometimes because you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna start right before, and I'm gonna get like 2 shots before this person dives and 1 or 2 good shots of the dive." But it's technology, and we're gonna use it to our advantage and to figure out how to do what we're doing easier and better. And that's, why we're here. People can see my photography at my website, adamtanner.com. I have my concert photography at Adam Tanner Photo on Instagram. I set up that account really just because I had my own personal Instagram account that I would post like photos from shows, photos from me traveling, photos from my record collection, food photos of when we went out to dinner, and it wasn't focused. And I felt like, okay, I needed one that was just music photography. So I set up that account, and it kind of, for me, was also leaning towards if I want to put a book out, or a zine, I want to be able to like, this kind of helps me focus towards it and grow an audience. And, not that I'm trying to sell a product, but I want to like people to know about what I do. And,
Yeah.
people that are only interested in hardcore punk, indie, whatever music aren't going to scroll through 50 photos of Adam eating food or traveling to see this great concert photo. And I just recently started a travel Instagram account to do that also, to go, okay, I started posting some of these travel photos on my website, and I really wanted the FOTO app to be better. It's good, but it feels like it's what Instagram was when it first started, and it wasn't like forcing you to do reels and worry about
Right.
audiences and algorithms, but it just doesn't necessarily have the reach yet. And I
Right.
don't know if it ever will, but
I
the
know.
settings and the way to set stuff up on there are much easier than Instagram. It's more photography focused as opposed to like Instagram feels like every new feature they add is like, yeah, none of us are going to use that. That's just a marketing thing for you to be more like TikTok and less like what a lot of us are going to that app for.
Yep.
So I have my website, a couple Instagram accounts. They're all kind of linked. So if you find one, you hopefully can find the others. That's where I'm at, and that's where you can find me. And one of the things I did when I was putting together the zine, also, I researched how to sell it online. And like
Yeah.
part of when I redid my website a couple years ago, I wanted to have something that I could set up a store easily on. So it was a little tedious, and I know it's not perfect, but I was like, okay, people can buy this zine or whatever else I may do through the store on the website. And it's pretty reasonable. And if you see me in person, I always have some with me. So I'm happy to sell one, or most of the time like, I'm happy to just have people appreciate it. And I'm very lucky to be in a place where I don't need to worry about whether I make the money back or not. But I just want people to see this and get it out there. And, whether somebody gives me a buck for it, or I hand it to them, or they buy it through my website for full price, I just want people to see it and enjoy it.
Well, the photos in it are awesome. I'm really glad I ordered it. I ordered it online, and I encourage people to do so. Like I said, the photos are great, and it's really well put together. So well worth getting. And again, thanks so much for your time and for sharing all this knowledge and information gained over decades of doing concert photography. I think people will find it useful who are learning or trying to learn to do some of these things. And thanks to everyone who's listening. If you've listened this far, I appreciate it. And if you haven't done so already, hit like, subscribe, press all the buttons for wherever you're listening and watching this so that more people can find out about it and we can continue to grow, get the picture.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.